Aloha, Steve Tobis here. Today we're going to be talking about tow surfing. We'll start by talking about the machine and some of the essential safety equipment that we carry on board. Then we'll go into the setup, kind of some modifications that we do to the machine to make it optimized for tow surfing. And then we'll finish off with a few tips and tricks that I've learned from some really experienced ocean safety operators here in Maui, as well as a few things that I've figured out the hard way myself. We'll talk about both tow surfing and tow foiling, so let's get into it. First and foremost, a really important thing to know is that tow surfing is inherently dangerous. There's a lot of different ways to do it, as well as a lot of different techniques that are really specific to different areas wherever you're tow surfing. The most important thing is that you're practiced with your tow partner and that you both know and are trained on how to operate the machine, what your contingency and emergency plans are, and how you're going to handle any situation that may come up. This machine is a Yamaha Wave Runner FXHO, naturally aspirated. It's probably one of the most common and popular configurations for a PWC on the water, especially for tow surfing and ocean safety. There's a lot of really good choices out there, a lot of great machines that have different pros and cons. Really what's important is do your own research, see what works best for you and your location and your tow setup. There isn't one right answer for everyone. Every person's different, every location is different. So really whatever you can get parts and service for and feel comfortable working on is probably what's going to be the best bet for you. So now moving into some of the essential safety equipment that we carry on the ski. In addition to everything required by your local regulatory bodies, life jackets, fire extinguishers, and so forth, a couple things that we carry specific to tow surfing applications are fins on a fin belt. These, you can wear the belt just around your waist and the fins will hang there. If you're operating at a place that's really far from your boat ramp or your launch, or you're the only people out and you have no chance for a rescue if something goes wrong, having fins is essential to be able to swim your ski back. It happens to everyone at some point. You're going to have to swim your ski. And when you have fins, you're going to be very happy that you do. I carry a dry bag with a toolkit and first aid kit in there. My first aid kit is pretty generic: bandages, some aspirin, tourniquets, all that stuff. Put together your safety kit yourself. You can go buy something, that's great, but know what's in it, know how to use it, how to access it, and where everything is. Because in an emergency, everything's happening so quick and there's so much sensory overload. Not having to stop and think is everything in an emergency situation. Just being able to react, know where your gear is, know how to get to it and how to use it. And I have a small little toolkit, which has basic stuff that I could deal with on the water: zip ties, some pliers, a screwdriver. So some of the spots here in Maui, especially when we get big swells early in the season, it sucks all the debris off the beach out into the water. So we have palm fronds, coconut husks, fishing nets, baggies. It's really common to suck stuff up into your ski. So I always carry two of these JetX tools, and these are amazing. I've saved countless sessions out on the water by having these tools. I carry two of them because if you drop one, it's nice to have a second. You could put a wrist leash on it or something like that, and that would help. But yeah, I carry two. I also carry a dive light. Also, having a mask on hand is really nice. So you can go down under the ski, you can look up into your intakes, and having that dive light just helps you shine it up in so you can see exactly where your jam is or the debris is in your intake or your impeller, instead of fishing around blindly in the dark. Even on the bright and sunniest days in our clear blue water in Maui, it's still hard to see up inside the ski where the debris jams, where your impeller actually sits and where you can get debris lodged in there. So having a good mask as well as a dive light and some JetX tools can be the difference in staying on the water and just having to take a short 5-minute break to clear your jam, or having to go all the way back to the boat ramp, put your ski on a trailer, and fish in there in the parking lot. So up front here in the console, I keep stuff that I'm using pretty often or regularly, or I want immediately available. I carry another small toolkit. This is more of my foiling toolkit. So this has my foil wrenches, my T30s, my screws, my shims, small stuff I need to make corrections on the water with my foil. I carry a knife just to have available. I also have a little beacon here. So this is nice to have if someone needs to come find you or you're in an emergency. My VHF radio in a waterproof pouch and a chest harness. I wear the chest harness more if I'm doing safety and we need to be communicating with a spotter on the cliff or in more constant communication, then I'll wear the chest harness. Otherwise, if I'm just, out towing or riding, then I usually keep it inside here. I also have sunscreen, whistle, sunglasses, and CO2 cartridges. So everything that's sitting up in the front in the glove box of the ski, as I call it, is stuff that I'm regularly using or things that I need to have quick and immediate access to, where I don't want to have to take the time to unstrap the front, reach down in the bow hatch, and find it that way. All right, so we'll talk about the setup and some of the modifications that we make to this machine to optimize it for tow surfing. Setting up your machine is really important. There's a lot of different ways to do it, and everyone kind of has their own likes and dislikes. Proper setup on your equipment won't replace training. Nothing can replace time on the water and time behind the throttle with you and your partner. Having the right setup will help keep you safe in some pretty sketchy situations. Probably the most obvious change to this ski is the inflatable collar. Now, these, in my opinion, are essential equipment for water safety and tow surfing. Just the stability it adds to the machine, especially when you're in whitewater and there's a lot of air and foam, the skis want to sink and sit down and get really unstable. This collar helps with that stability. It helps the ski get up and move when you're in that big aerated water. And then just the general utility when you're tying up to the dock at the boat ramp or you're next to skis in the lineup, you can kind of bump into people and it's no big deal. There's really no disadvantages to them. They turn pretty much the same. It's a lot drier ride as you're cruising, driving to your lineup. You're not getting splasted with water. The collar kind of deflects the spray out. And overall, it's just a general utility thing that's really nice to have. So a pretty common question is, what is this yellow line that goes in the bow hatch? This is a permanently fixed bow line. So it loops to the eyelet in the front of the ski. And what this does, this is a general utility line. This line is about 10 feet long, and we use it for PWC rescues. So if your ski dies or something happens out there and you need to get towed back, this is already hooked up to the front of your ski. You can just clip it up to your recovery vessel and get towed back into where you started. One modification I did to this that's pretty nice to have is a little float tied to the carabiner up front. So if you toss this or it drops in the water, the part that you need to grab and clip is gonna float while the rest of the line will sink down out of the way. This line just lives in my bow hatch. So I have a stopper knot here that prevents this line from pulling out when the bow hatch is closed. So that way I can't suck up the line or it gets caught underneath the ski or anything. Really important safety thing to have. It's one of those that you're probably never going to need it, but when you do need it, you're going to be really glad that you have it. The next thing that is probably really obvious is the traction wrap. It's a really nice thing to have so you can stand on the gunnels here. It protects your board from getting bashed up when you slide your board in. It gives you extra spots to stand on the ski when you're operating, so you just have a little more flexibility to adapt to whatever situation you're in. So after I pick up the rider, I like to slide the board into the gunnel here, and then I'll stand outside the board here and use my leg to lock in this board as we're pushing out through the whitewater. Having this traction on the outer rail just gives me an extra spot to stand and work on the ski without worrying about slipping off or losing the equipment or hurting myself. You'll see that all my seats and hatches are strapped down really tight with these nice straps from HSA. And the reason for this is that if the worst case scenario were to happen and you were to lose your ski in the waves, as it's tumbling, if everything isn't strapped down tight, it's a very real possibility that that whole bow hatch could rip off or your seats could come off and your engine compartment could fill with water, flood, and sink your ski. Now that's an absolute worst case scenario. So what we're doing by strapping all these down is we're creating a situation where it's almost impossible for these seats to come off. So even if we're going to try to pull this rear seat off or any of these seats, it's still attached and stuck to the ski. If we were to lose the ski in the waves and it goes for a tumble, everything should stay strapped down and secure so that we can at least recover the ski and drive us back to safety instead of sinking and losing everything. Going into a couple things that we do up here in the handlebars and the control area of the ski. One of them is putting an emergency lanyard in. This is used for when the primary operator, the person running the wrist lanyard, if they happen to fall off, get knocked off, or something happens where they get separated from the ski and it's dead in the water, this is an emergency key that we can use to activate the kill switch and get the ski turned on and get ourselves back to safety. This is not really designed to be used as a primary operating system. If our ski's running on this kill switch and we lose the ski or we get knocked off, it's going to stay running, and that can cause a lot of problems, especially if your ski flips, goes upside down, or gets stuck in the waves, and it's still turning on and running. You can get some pretty severe engine damage. This is really just designed as an emergency option, so that way you can recover the ski, get your partner, and get yourselves back to safety and reset off the wrist lanyard. Also up here, we have a tourniquet set up. So this is designed to be visible, easily accessible. This is something I added after I started foiling. Running foils, especially big wave foils, are super sharp and it's really easy to get cut pretty bad. So having a tourniquet is really important. I also have a Sharpie on here so that way we can write on it. And I replace this every year. Just being in the sun, who knows how good it degrades or lasts. They're cheap, and this is a quick and easy way to hook them up so that way everyone can see it. It's visible, easily accessible, and ready to go if you do need it. This is a pretty cool piece of safety equipment that I've started to use in the last year, and now I pretty much won't run without it. This is a rescue ring, is kind of the most commonly used name for this piece of equipment. It's bolted to the side of the ski here. I have mine permanently attached. You can use a carabiner or a quick link or something if you want, but I always like having it with me. It's a pretty cool way to pick up your rider quickly, consistently, and easily, especially with the collar. With having this collar, it extends your reach that you need to grab your rider by about 8 inches. So it can be a little bit harder to get down to the water level to pick them up with their hand. For having this ring, it gives you just another, almost 2 feet of reach. So you can stick this down, your rider can sling their arm through it, and you can lead them back right onto the sled. I have it set up so that I can hold it in my hand like this and still hold on to the handlebars with 2 hands. And then when I need to come in for a pickup, all I do is just shuffle right down here, face it towards my rider. They can hook their arm in it, and I guide them right back onto the sled right here. This is a really nice piece of safety equipment. Guys have been using these for a decade plus, but they've only kind of recently become more popular. It just makes me feel a little more consistent as an operator, and our pickups are a lot quicker and a lot faster with it. So this is one I highly recommend. So moving back here, this is a quick release for our tow line. Anytime we're towing anything on the ski, whether it's a rider, another ski, a buoy, we always clip to the quick release. Because if a situation happens and we want to dump that rope, say we're in a crowded lineup and another ski runs over our tow rope and now we're hooked together and a set's coming, you bet I'm going to pull this quick release, dump our rope, and go off. I'd rather lose a tow rope than lose a whole ski. So this bungee line hooks up to its own D-ring, which has its own quick release shackle here. So this whole system is dedicated, isolated, and isn't tied into anything else on the ski. For the sled attachment, it's pretty simple. There's just one D-ring down here. It's a dedicated D-ring, so nothing else is interfering with it. Then we use the OEM rear transom tie downs for the side straps here. The reason we run them down underneath is that it keeps the sled pulling down so the sled can't flip up and rat trap on you. As far as sleds go, I really like using the inflatable sled. They're lighter, they're easier to handle, they're a little more nimble in the water, feel less pull on the rear of the ski versus a foam sled. I really have had no issues with keeping them inflated or puncturing them. I've dropped tow foils, tow surfboards, like really sharp fins, foils, basically knives on these sleds, and they're pretty much indestructible. So I've been really happy with the performance and quality of my sleds. There's a lot of different ways to run bungees on your sled. I use a pretty simple, just double cross X system here. It is just tight enough that when my board's on the sled, it can't flip over. Even if it's, if it's tipping or wants to roll, like it's always going to pull it back down. But it's not too tight to where I can't pretty easily, slide my board up and in there. So figuring out the right tension is important. Having them so that your board, if it's rocking back and forth and you're driving it around or going through waves, it's not gonna fall over because that would be bad. And not too tight to where you can't slide it in. So getting this set kind of just right is important. Mine aren't super tight, it's like probably 5 or 6 inches before I start to get tension on them. So it's pretty easy for me to slide my board in, and then there's really no way that my board can fall over when it's driving around out there. Foiling adds another level of complexity to working with your gear and managing it on the ski. Not only are you just dealing with the board, but you have the foil as well. They're awkward, they're bulky, they don't really fit anywhere nicely. This is a way I figured out to strap a second setup so that when you're riding with your partner, that everyone can bring their own gear. You can strap your mast across the third seat just using some short cam straps. Now this board is locked in enough that we can go pump through waves, we can go tow, we can do pickups, we can operate everything safely, and this board's really not in the way. Another foil specific tip that helps with handling the gear and getting yourself back on the outside, especially if you're in a situation with a lot of water moving or you're having a hard time getting water started, is to have the rider flip the board over and the operator can grab the foil right behind the front wing here. And now you have full control over the board and everything. I like to rest it right on the collar and the outer gunnel. So I have just a nice little platform here. And then I can operate the ski and drive out with my right hand. This is something that you definitely want to practice. But once you have it dialed, it's really easy and quick to run the ski to the outside. You can punch through white water, no problem. And just having control of this board right here by holding the fuse, it lets you get back on the outside a lot quicker than trying to tow out through breaking waves or big whitewater where it can be tough to foil through. So yeah, hopefully that was a helpful video. Like I said at the beginning, there's a lot of different ways to do this. I'm just showing you how I do it with my buddies. There's a lot of different ways to go about this and to be safe. The most important thing is spending time with your partner and understanding why you're doing things the way you're doing it. Hopefully there's a tip or two that you could pick from here. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Aloha.